a little further ahead. As we know, and I'll come to ask you in a moment, later on in 2020, there was the second lockdown, and then the third lockdown in early January 2021. And moving forward, still a process of unlocking and removing restrictions as one went into the spring, early summer of 2021. One of the risks that was going to be faced by the population at that stage, in particular perhaps the younger population, was a risk of long COVID. Do you think that that risk was flagged sufficiently, taken into account sufficiently by policymakers in that later period?
Well, it was definitely flagged. It was a real issue. And I think by that stage in the unlocking, so we're talking about the unlocking in 2021. That unlocking was done much better than the previous unlocking, and it was properly monitored with proper gaps in between the stages and the next stage. And indeed, there are examples where the stages were pushed back further in order to allow the prevalence not to rise too high. So I thought that was a much better process and much more structured, and kept prevalence lower than it otherwise would be. I don't know to what extent long COVID was factored into the thinking of the policymakers on that.
Well, going back to the period we were looking at then, and sort of second half of 2020, we know, we've seen references in the diary notes and so on that we've looked at. You've explained prevalence was increasing over the summer and into the autumn. The mechanisms that were put in place to react, tiers, rule of six and so on. You make clear in your statement that from sort of late September, the view that Sage was expressing was that there ought to be some sort of circuit breaker, at least to try and create a pause and to reduce the prevalence. Is that a fair summary of the sort of general position towards the end of the year? And then what I want to do now is look at a series of entries in your notes to try and understand the sequence of events running up to the second lockdown. And so if we can start, please, by looking